Thank you very much. So, a journey into sipping rums. Ladies and gentlemen, for me, a really great pleasure to be standing here in front of you. I'm very thankful that you came to this presentation. And I am Slovakian by birth. However, I am a Dominican by soul. And I will explain why. I am the global ambassador for Brugal Rums. And I will be talking about rum. But before I do that, let me please tell you, who am I to tell you about rums? Well, I was born in Košice, in Slovakia, just around the corner when you think about it. I pursued my university degree in Bratislava, and one summer I traveled to the United States. It was a work and travel, and I discovered something. It was there, the bar. I fell in love with it. When I came back, I started looking at every possible opportunity to be either in a bar or behind the bar. It was my favorite place. I had the opportunity to work in different countries. I worked in Germany, I worked in Spain, and of course in my home Slovakia. Actually, some of my previous co-workers are here. It's no pressure over there, right? Well, and then something happened. I have moved over to the Dominican Republic. Actually, when I was selecting the name for the presentation, I decided to call it A Journey into Sipping Rums. It was inspired in my journey into Dominican Republic. I moved there, I lived there for 9 years. I paid taxes, everything, serious. I even worked as a bartender over there. I couldn't get rid of it. Now, as a bartender, I knew rums, right? They were always there. They were always in your back bar. But when you're in the Caribbean, the rums, they have a different feel. I automatically started reading about rums, how the production, started visiting different distilleries in the Dominican Republic and around. I became part of the International Rum Expert Panel. And I got to actually taste rum professionally on international competitions like in Miami or in Berlin. Actually, one of my adolescent dreams came true. I was paid for drinking, exactly. Now, I was fortunate enough to start working with the Brugal team. Brugal rum is made in the Dominican Republic, and I was introduced into the details of rum production. I remember I have two very interesting memories from my beginnings in the rum business. The first one is from the distillery. I was there just cleaning the fermentation tanks, just pouring water on them. And I had this smile on my face. I was like, how on earth did I get over here? Like, I'm loving this. This is amazing. The second memory is from our aging warehouse in Puerto Plata, home of Brugal. We were just casually walking through the warehouses with our master blenders. I was like, let's see how that barrel tastes. Put down the barrel, open the barrel. The moment we tasted that rum, I was just, again, how on earth did I get over here? This is amazing. So, just to make it clear, rum is my favorite spirit. I believe rum sits on the top shelf next to fine whiskeys and fine cognacs. So when exploring different subjects for this presentation, I had a little talk with a colleague of mine from the Macallan team. You probably know him, Sice. And we had a really funny exchange of ideas. While the whiskey industry, single malts, are trying to convince you that you can use them in cocktails, we in the rum industry, we try to convince you that you can actually sip a rum. Yes, you heard me. A rum can be sipped. And this is what it's going to be about. This presentation is for people that like rum or are thinking they like it and they need to confirm it. So I will be talking about what makes a sipping rum and how to offer it to your consumers, to your guests in your bars. Now, before we do that, before we get into details like that, I'm looking for Instagram followers. If anybody, just go for it. Now, if we look at the whole category, since I'm in the rum business, I always hear, and when I talk with fellow rum judges or fellow rum friends, we always say, the next year is going to be the year of rum. I'm 100% sure about it. Then the next year comes, and what you get is normal drinks press, just pushing the message, rum sales are falling. We maintain our positive sense, right? And we go, okay, maybe not this year, but next year, definitely it's going to be the year of rum. And again, newspapers, rum sales are falling. So if we look right into the whole category and we divide the rum sales into segments, we can definitely see that, yes, standard rum is falling. However, when you look close, you will realize that premium and above are growing. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is fantastic news. That means that the consumers, your guests, are moving away from standard rum. They're choosing those nice sipping rums. And that means that the rum revolution was here for the last 5 years. The rum trend is here. And you as bartenders, bar owners, you should make sure that you're going to be part of that trend. Don't miss that train. Now, even though we have very similar methods of elaboration when we think about rum compared to whiskey or cognac, because what we do, we ferment our raw material, we distill our raw material, we can use column stills or pot stills or distill it, and we age it. We even use the same barrels like the whiskey industry or the cognac industry, right? So what is the difference? There is one key difference between us and them, and that is tropical aging. Simply the temperatures in the Dominican Republic and in the Caribbean in general are just very high. A friend of mine sums it up very nicely. He says, there's only 2 seasons in the Dominican Republic. It's summer and hell. Right now, it's hell season, slowly going into summer. When you tour the warehouse in Brugal, you can't stay there longer than 15 minutes. It's just so hot. It's incredible. What I'm going to show you next is going to be very depressing. I apologize. I downloaded the average maximum and minimum temperatures for Dominican Republic versus Kiev, Ukraine. If somebody starts crying over here, I will understand that. When we look at that, your maximum temperatures barely touch our minimum temperatures in the Dominican Republic. Now, what does that mean? We have constant heat. By the way, over there, the tip, small tip, that's hell season. Now, when we think what kind of effect this tropical aging, these high temperatures have on aging, actually, we have to look at it from 2 different points of view. We have to look at it from a positive side and a negative side. Which one do you want first? Positive. Fantastic, she's a positive person. So the positive side of tropical aging is that we get results, aromas and flavors faster than our colleagues from Scotland, for example. Actually, we can get them 5 times faster. When you think about it, a rum aged in the Dominican Republic during 1 year is basically more or less equivalent, taking into consideration different raw materials, like a whiskey aged in Scotland for up to 5 years. It's quite fast, isn't it? Unfortunately, we also have to mention the negative part. And the negative part is angel share. You probably thought about it, right? So, angel share evaporation in Scotland, it's around 2-3%. In Dominican Republic, Caribbean, it's 8 to 12% yearly. After 8-9 years, there's basically nothing left in the barrel. The angels, they are simply drinking more in the Caribbean. Yeah. Now, 8 to 12% is a high quantity. However, thinking about the positive sides, we get a lot of flavor. So this is what is really important. Now, for the aging process, we use two different types of casks, mainly in the Caribbean, as I can see. We use white American oak casks. Those casks were previously used to age bourbon. These different casks give us flavors like cocoa, chocolate, vanilla. We talk about spices like cinnamon. And then some companies are fortunate enough to have access to special sherry oak casks that were previously used to age Oloroso. These casks give you more of a raisin kind of a taste, dried fruits. Now I know you might know this, but every time I try to explain what aging is about, I always use this really nice example of tea making. When you make tea, you put the tea bag inside the water. What happens? The water gets the color and the flavor from the tea bag. It's more or less the same like aging when you think about it. Very, very simplified. Because when you put the alcohol inside those barrels, the alcohol gets the aromas and flavors from the barrel. This is why we're talking about those different aromas like cinnamon and chocolate, etc., etc. Now, when we talk about tropical aging, we have to talk about different type of tea making. You have two cups, one with cold water, the other one with hot. You put the tea bag inside. Which one's going to be done first? The one with the hot water. And that's tropical aging, when you think about it. Now, what makes a good sipping rum? That's the final question, isn't it? I think what the most important part in a sipping rum is aging. There is a certain tipping point. When the rum is aged sufficiently, it suddenly becomes capable of sipping. Now, aging adds three main characteristics. The number one is body. Body is a sensation on your palate that you perceive like weight, greatness on your palate. It is something that you start to realize the more rums you taste. So make sure you turn around when you work, check your rums that you have on a display and start tasting, start experimenting. The second thing is aftertaste. And aftertaste is basically residual flavors. These residual flavors get created by all the wood extract, the tannins that come from the barrels. The longer the rum stays on your palate, generally means it is longer aged, which is good. Now the third one is complexity. This is my favorite one. Quite misunderstood many times. Complexity is how many different aromas or flavors can you perceive in the rum. Now here's something very important. Let's go with an example again. I love those examples. It's so much easier to explain things. You take two glasses, fill them up with the same water. To the first glass, you add 1 drop of vanilla. To the second glass, you add 100 drops of vanilla. Now, when you smell them, complexity, 1. Vanilla. One is subtle, the other one is much more perceivable. That doesn't mean that the other one is more complex. However, you add a little drop of extract of cinnamon, now you have 2 different complexities, okay? So, how can you work with complexity? How does aging add complexity? We do something that we call double aging. A double aging is using the barrels to the maximum. You take the liquid that you want to age, you age it first in one barrel. With our Brugal 1888, for example, what we do, we age in white American oak casks. This is where we get all the chocolatey cocoa and vanilla and cinnamony notes. And then we take out the liquid, make a first formulation, and put them again into sherry oak barrels now that were previously aging Oloroso for another time period. This is where it gets much more raisiny notes, much more fruity notes, red fruits inside. The complexity grows the more barrels you use to age your rum. So this is very, very important. Now, how to use this knowledge of what is a good sipping rum, which, by the way, you need to taste, keep on tasting, discovering, finding out which is a longer aftertaste, bigger body. It is something very difficult to explain just by words. It is discovered by doing, drinking. Yes. Now, let's say your guests come to your bar. When they ask for a cocktail, we already have a vocabulary, a set of questions for us to find the best cocktail for that person. Do you want it sweet, sour, bitter, salty? Or do you want vodka? Do you want rum? What do you want? These set of questions help us understand what kind of cocktail to do for that guest, right? Let's think about whiskeys. Do you want a peated whiskey? It's always the first question. Now, what about rums, right? So here's what I suggest. Start with the number one question. Do you want to mix it or do you want to sip it? Because we have some really interesting sipping rums. You already know when they say that they want to sip a rum, you're looking for something with a higher body, higher complexity, longer aftertaste, right? Second question. Do you want a drier rum or do you want a sweeter rum? Dry rums actually can dry out your palate because there's a higher tannin content. Whereas sweeter rums, they tend to be a little bit more richer on the palate, a wetter feeling. But it's all a question of preference, of course. Third question, do you want a bigger rum or a more subtle rum? Where big rums are the ones that really fill your palate. Subtle rums are those where you think about and drink it like, I know that flavor. The flavors are much more subtle for more refined palates. Once you have those questions answered, what you can do is start going towards flavors. Would you like to try more only the white American oak cask influence, or would you like to try and experience more of the sherry influence inside? Orient yourself. Know your back bar. It's really important to have a good selection of rums. A Greek friend of mine says there's a rum for everybody. So let's say somebody comes to your bar and he asks for a whiskey. Why not suggest a rum instead? Push him. Somebody comes and asks for a Manhattan cocktail. Why not suggest to do it with a rum? Become category ambassadors. That's basically what I would love you to see, to become. Introduce them to something that we call nearly neat cocktails. Nearly neat cocktails is a concept that its purpose is to present exceptional cocktails as an option instead of classical cocktails. In nearly neat cocktails, the hero of the mix is the sipping rum. Adding a few dashes of liquors, bitters, we change the experience. We are able to create a more sweeter drink, more refreshing drink, different. Also, sometimes the occasion asks for a different experience. What we are trying to do, however, with nearly neat cocktails is to enhance many times the flavors and aromas that are already present in the rum. Let's take an example. Let's take a look at a few examples, shall we? So, meet Mario. Mario works in Angelita Bar in Madrid. Anybody visited the bar before? How many? One, fantastic. How many of you been to Madrid before? If you're ever there, fantastic. If you're ever there, please make sure to visit Mario over there. And let me know if you're there. It would be really a pleasure to share a drink with you. Now, what Mario did is he played a little bit on the sherry note of Brugal 1888 by adding the sherry over there. And still expanding a little bit the complexity with cardamom bitters, cardamom syrup, and tobacco bitters. So we tried it actually with a dessert. We paired it. It was very nice. Now, there's something I really like about nearly neat cocktails. That is that the only thing you need is a spoon and a jigger. Nothing else is really necessary. You generally don't shake these cocktails. I think the beauty is in simplicity. I do think that. Now, let's take a look at the second cocktail. The second cocktail comes from Dominican Republic. How many of you have been to the Dominican Republic? You've been everywhere, right? Fantastic. So if you're ever in the Dominican Republic, if you're ever in Santo Domingo, this is a place, Pavol, that I definitely recommend you should visit. It is the oldest tavern in the Americas. The building is from 1505. I worked there for 2 years. This is why I talk about it so much. And Ramon works there now, a really good friend of mine. And he does like tiki. This is why he goes and puts cinnamon and orange peel everywhere. He smokes the glass with cinnamon and orange peel. But look at the sugar that he uses, vanilla. He adds a little bit of vanilla in there. He wants to play a little bit more on the vanilla note of the 1888 rum inside. Not complicating it that much. Also thinking about the cocoa bitters over there, right? So, apart from these examples, we do have some other examples. We add Pedro Jimenez sherry with some coffee bitters. There's plenty of room for experimentation with these cocktails. And we know that consumers are moving towards sipping. So definitely encouraging these type of drinks. Now, just to finish it up, a brief presentation. This barometer is about borders. And I hope you will find that border where rums become sipping rums. I hope that you will cross that border and never look back, because sipping rums are amazing. And I can only encourage you, apart from sipping rums, to enjoy life sip by sip. So thank you very much. And if you have any questions, I think we have plenty of time for questions.
Pavol, you are 30 minutes before
I know,
your
I know.
time. Поэтому у нас есть время на вопросы. Друзья?
Well, if there's any additional questions, we'll be at the 1888 stand. Plus, we are serving a nearly neat cocktail. So feel free to join us over there. Thank you very much. It's a question.
Сколько лет выдерживается Brugal?
Да.
Вы сколько лет выдерживаете свой ром?
So, how do I put this on?
Сколько лет выдерживаете вы свой ром Brugal?
Gotcha. How many years? Okay. The Brugal 1888 rum is a double-aged rum, very complex yet smooth, that keeps on evolving in your glass. That complexity gets created through this double aging. First, white American oak casks for up to 8 years. Then we continue with the sherry oak casks for 6 more years. For up to 6 more years. It's a total of up to 14 years.
How many room do you have after 14 years from first volume?
From first volume. As you can imagine, because of the whole angel share, and the angels are drinking too much, man. It is a limited edition. Right
About
now,
5%?
Well, I don't know the percentage. I know on the bottle, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think we have around 600 barrels that we use to age Brugal 1888. And the thing is, not every barrel actually gets into, not every barrel has the privilege to age the liquid that is going to become Brugal 1888. Only the ones that get selected by the master blenders, the exceptional casks over there. Good?
Thank you.
Very, very welcome. Done. Perfect. Well, thank you very much, guys.